Hey guys, welcome to Two Seals and a Walrus. Today, we are going to talk about the essential ingredient to success in business, or I would argue, success in anything, really. And you can't even argue this point because it has been measured scientifically by the folks who are the authority in deciding what creates a good business practice and creates an ingredient for success. And they're saying it's twice as important as being intelligent and knowing your job. So you might want to stick around for this conversation. Hey, I am your co-host, Sean Webb, in the studio today. As always, we are joined by United States Navy SEAL Ben Johnson, and to his right, United States Navy SEAL Doug Moulton, two guys who are not unfamiliar with leadership. And today, we're going to have an episode on emotional intelligence, which we don't have an outside guest for, but, I mean, I'm kind of the guest. I mean, I'm one of the experts in emotional intelligence. I wrote a book on this stuff. Book plug up early.
Boom, book plug.
Mind Hacking Happiness. If you want to pick it up, you can get it at Amazon or Audible. But basically, this is the first book in existence that explains why and how emotions arise in your mind. And that's a pretty big portion of emotional intelligence. Most of the emotional intelligence programs that you find on the planet, and I have been through the training of the best ones on the planet to my disappointment, frankly, they don't explain how your emotions work. And they often approach emotional intelligence from a mindfulness-based, meditation-based approach. And while that's effective, and while there's good science behind it, it also helps to understand how your emotions work. Because when you understand how your emotions arise within your mind takes notice of that. When you're able to take your mind, turn back in on itself, and understand what your mind is doing, that frees you from your mind's processing. And so that's what that book explains all about, and explains the mastery of how to do it, etc. And you basically get a whole section of your mind untied that was tied up with a lot of the emotional processing period. To give you a clue of how important emotional intelligence is, Harvard Business Review, on the cover of their On Point magazine, which is where they put all their best science, they called emotional intelligence the essential ingredient to success. And in fact, the science proves out that having emotional intelligence in any job role on the planet is twice as important as being smart and knowing your job. That's why today's show is important. And so we're just going to have a conversation today about emotional intelligence and why it's important, what you need to know about it, how you can increase yours, which will do a whole bunch of awesome stuff for your mind and your brain, which is really cool. So you guys ready to knock this out?
Let's do it.
Very excited here today. I'll be doing a
Happy to be here.
NPR voice for this episode.
So let's start with the science. I got a bunch of science up here on these monitors, so I will simply recite some of the peer-reviewed published studies and what emotional intelligence and increasing emotional intelligence can do for the mind, and then we can get into our personal takes on this topic.
Did we define emotional intelligence clearly?
No,
Like a one or two bullet?
No. You wanna?
I'll take a swing at it.
Take it away, Doug.
Sure.
I think emotional intelligence is the accumulated knowledge or understanding of your first-person reactions, observations, emotions of situations, peoples, or things. It is your ability to observe them.
Yes.
Not inherently do something well with them, but your ability to observe them. Because, go a little further, the moment you actually observe them, it changes the chessboard immediately.
Yeah. You change the dynamic, like,
Yeah.
and the neuroscience of that is you dumping yourself into meta-awareness, right? And meta-awareness, for the folks who are listening, is the awareness of your awareness. It's the awareness of being able to know what you're being aware about, or know that what you're looking at, and that gives you a different perspective. It changes your perspective of being in the mix of the emotional processing that's going on, and because your brain tries to convince you that you are that thing, that you are those emotional responses, that you are the mess that's going on. It immediately changes your perspective from being inside that maelstrom to being outside of it and being able to affect it in a large degree, I think. From being able to play with the variables that have come together to create your emotions, which again, I wrote a book about, but your ability to then take control of your perception and how you're seeing things and how you're appraising things, and being able to take care in putting things on your self map that are either important to you, or taking the things off that aren't important to you, so that you aren't as affected by, politics on Facebook, so to speak, or whatever it is that's throwing you into the tizzy for the day. And a lot of science has been done on this stuff. I'll look up on my monitors. Peer-reviewed published studies have showed that the increases in emotional intelligence will increase your IQ. Your self-awareness increases, your self-regulation increases, your verbal and spatial intelligence increases, your reasoning ability increases, happiness goes up, sense of control goes up, empathy, self-efficacy, compassion goes up. And in contrast, a lot of the negative stuff also reduces. Like you can reduce or eliminate depression, you can reduce anxiety, you can reduce major depressive disorder, you can reduce substance disorder. The school benefits, of course, if you're messing with your brain and improving your brain, they have measured school benefits associated with increased higher emotional intelligence. You get increased attention, higher focus, better adaptive skills, better social skills, better leadership qualities, higher standardized ACTs, SAT, and WAIS 3 scores connected with increasing your emotional intelligence. And, one of the things that I've noticed, just having two SEALs in the room here, is that whenever I meet a United States Navy SEAL, one of the things that I notice is that they always have high leadership abilities. It's like you guys are a group of born leaders who fall together to agree to follow each other's leadership in certain different scenarios. But all of you guys are amazing leaders in your field when you break out and go into the civilian community. Like Doug, you're doing a startup company, and you're involved in a number of other projects and companies. You're doing some stuff for connected with defense and law enforcement and things like that. Ben, you're also connected into the law enforcement community, and you're doing some projects and some startups that are very forward-reaching and whatnot, and you're an officer in one of these organizations. How much has emotional intelligence, or being able to see into your mind and seeing into the mind of others, how much has that helped you guys?
So as you increase, or at least provide healthy maintenance to your emotional intelligence, you need to realize that you will outgrow people, places, and or things. Sometimes it's a good thing. It's never going to be like a smooth, happy, rainbows, unicorns process.
Right.
And I think a lot of people stifle themselves because they don't want to outgrow their friends.
Right.
I learned really young. I remember in grade school realizing, we just outgrow friends. I think I was just wired a little weird, but at an early age, I realized that, and I never let it stifle me. And I think it's important to realize that if you are going to work on your emotional intelligence, there is a high probability that you will outgrow people, places, or things.
Right.
But it will be for the better in the long run. Growth comes at a cost. Knowledge comes at a cost. Realize that improving yourself isn't easy, and it's not all rainbows and unicorns.
Right. So understanding that minds mesh at times and then they don't mesh at times gives you a better ability to understand and deal with the emotional processing of having to break ties.
Yeah.
Would that be a good way of putting it?
Yeah, I think it's a Tom Waits quote that says, "You're under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 seconds ago."
Yeah.
Alan Watts.
Alan Watts, thank you.
Tom Waits.
Tomato, potato. So I just saw something with Tom Waits.
Yeah.
And for reference, he's quoting somebody who's on the wall behind Ben's head.
It's a great quote nonetheless.
Tom Waits.
Tom Waits.
Yeah, no, I think emotional intelligence is important, but you got to realize growth, whether your goals are growth, building something, a good friend of mine put it this way. He goes, achieving your goal, whether that goal is a thing, a company, or increasing your emotional intelligence, achieving your goals is never about how hard you're willing to work. It is about what you are willing to sacrifice to get there.
Yeah. Now, I see the science in that being self-evident, but let's explain it. Let's unpack it for a second, because when you're talking about growing, changing the people that you hang around with, changing your environment, changing, letting go of old ideas, all of that can be defined as your brain defining self, right? All the things that you attach to, be it ideas, people, schedules, what you eat, everything in your life is attached to this thing called your sense of self, and it helps dictate every one of your actions in life. And changing that thing is freaking tough, because the whole process overall, 50,000 foot view, is that your limbic system scans all of your environment for threats, including your thoughts and the headlines, not just whether or not there's a snake on the ground or that's a hose, but also whether something that someone just said is a threat to your ideals or a threat to what you think about things or how you perceive things. And that sense of self is 50% of your emotional processing. The things that you care about, the people that are around you, the ideas that you cling to, the beliefs that you adhere to, all of those things become wrapped into your sense of self. And changing that thing is a bigger deal than people realize. And this is why change is so hard in the world, is because 50% of your emotional processing, and understand why this is so important, your brain is there as your organ of survival, and it's supposed to help you identify threats to self, threats to you. And if it screws up, then you might not make it into tomorrow, which is something that you guys had to deal with on a daily basis for a long time during deployments, etc. But if your sense of self isn't dead on accurate, it could cost you your life, literally. Like if you don't think if you believe that you can jump that 8-foot crevice and you can't jump that 8-foot crevice when you're running from a bear, then you're going to try to jump that sucker and you're going to die because you don't have a good assessment or definition of self. And so when you go to change something on your self map, when you go to change a belief, or you go to change a person who's around you, or you go to change something in your life, your brain says, let's not do that, because this is the entire definition of stuff that we have been defending forever. And if we change that, not only do we have a new list that's going to be unfamiliar to me of all the threats coming in that I now have to check against a new list, now I have to go back and check all of the stuff that we had cleared previously to make sure that they're not a threat to self. And so the brain resists change from a physiological perspective, not to mention that you brought up previously, Doug, about how it's a physical change in the brain, about how your brain just doesn't want to change stuff because it's an expression of
work.
Work
is hard.
Yeah, it's burning energy, which could be used to help you survive. And so it doesn't want to change stuff. And so changing something on your self map will certainly change your entire emotional landscape. Like if I cared about, what Trump did or whatever, and if I get all up in arms about shit, it's going to wrap up a large portion of my day if I'm watching the news or watching social media or whatever, and it's going to create a bunch of emotional processing that I then have to get by before I can get to work, shit like that. If I just take that off my self map altogether, all of a sudden all that shit that comes through the headlines and whatnot doesn't bother me anymore, because I don't have to deal with an emotional reaction associated with that bullshit before I get back to thinking about whatever it was that I needed to think about to get my work done or do something productive, etc. And so when you change, when you accept that yourself can be malleable, such as outgrowing your friends, and being okay with the fact that, you guys were best buddies a year ago and maybe this year you're not going to be best buddies anymore, that's an incredible, insightful, powerful thing that you can allow yourself then to be malleable and change your entire emotional landscape.
Well, I think it's important too. You were talking about 50% of the emotional landscape is your self map.
Yeah.
There's some real, so people might be listening and think, oh, well, I don't really need to improve my emotional intelligence. Here's the risk though. If your self map isn't accurate, you're going to date people who are unhealthy. Yeah. You're going to find yourself in enabling relationships, dynamics. You're going to make really bad dating decisions. You're probably going to make less than ideal professional decisions. You're going to put up with people that kind of make you miserable. So when looking at your self map, it's not like, oh, maybe I need this, maybe I don't. If you don't increase it, you're saying, hey, I'm okay with the amount of bullshit I have, which might be okay. But you need to realize that in accurately identifying yourself and saying, yeah, I'm not going to fucking deal with that. Like, no, that friend's a fucking turd. Yeah, fuck him. Right?
Right.
That is knowing myself very accurately and being comfortable with my skin.
Yeah.
But you got to realize it has first, second, and third order implications, whether it's friend, social, family, or professional.
Right.
You might outgrow your company, you might outgrow relationships, but it's all to achieve a better, more accurate version and self-realization of yourself. Yeah. a more accurate perception of yourself.
Yeah. And perception's the other side of the equation, right? When you can start to see things differently, right? Because I put in the Mind Hacking Habitus books, the two things that are coming together to create every emotional reaction you have. One is your sense of self, which is all of the things on your laundry list of I am this, that you then have to defend. And so, you come hit my kid, that's going to create a large reaction of anger in me, and I'm going to put you on the ground, that type of thing. So I'm protecting my self stuff. being able to perceive how you see yourself changes not just your self map, but also the other side of the equation, which is your perception, because your perception comes in from all the stuff that your limbic system's processing and your just senses are processing, and how you look at it and how you look at stuff.
Here's a hard pill to swallow with that. Everyone, I don't care who you are, there are things about yourself that you probably don't like or aren't happy with. You know, when the first year and a half after my last deployment, when I got home in 2014, you know, I got out of a bad relationship 5 days after I got home. I was already not in a good place. You know, like a year later, I kind of realized, I was like, I don't like myself. And it was so horrible to realize. But in the same hand, I was so happy to realize it, because once I realized it, I could do something about it.
Yeah.
So once I realized that, it was like a switch hit.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, it sucks to realize, like, I'm a dick to my family, which
Yeah.
I was for a while. And, you know, love them to death. They helped me through some tough times. But, you know, once I realized that, I was like, okay, now I can step forward. I
Yeah.
didn't see the footing well enough to step forward. I didn't want to see my feet.
Excellent. So, Ben, when did you make the corner change? When did you make the transition from, I understand myself, I know myself, I'm good in my skin, but fuck off, to anybody else who thinks a little differently? Because you made a transition.
Third grade? Fourth grade?
Yeah, I don't think I ever made an aggressive transition.
Yeah.
I've kind of been in a like almost like a Jungian perspective of it, from, like, if you want to break it down even simpler than your self map before that happens. Somewhere in the field of the Jungian perspective of conflict resolution, it left in the wake of that, there was a quote, and I'm not entirely sure where it came from, but I believe something to the tune of conflict is the beginning of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's weird to people, especially when you consider the fact that we're operating under the pretense of consciousness through biological, facility that is conflict averse.
Right. But still, I want to nail you down on this, because there was a point, at least from what you told me how you used to be previously, where you took other people's thoughts and emotions into consideration less regarding what your actions were. And then now recently, you're a much more empathetic and compassionate guy overall. Is that just wisdom kind of putting its foot in the door?
I think that's the case with everybody that gets old enough, and I don't think it's anything.
That's well said.
I don't think that it's anything that's indicative of, unfortunately and embarrassingly enough, it's not indicative of a pursuit of betterment. I think it's indicative of,
For you personally,
experience.
just not
Personally, right? Because the reality is I'll still sit square in front of somebody who needs affirmation or needs whatever, and if I feel like it compromises my integrity, I'll tell them to go fuck themselves, whatever.
Right.
So I don't know that that's changed entirely, but I do find myself acting in service of others more so than in service of myself.
Yeah, but a couple of conversations you've had previously, such as like over bar conversations and stuff like that, where you've raised the consciousness level of the individual on the other side of the table, where you've taken that from, it might have been previously go fuck yourself, to now you bring it up to their attention to say,
Right.
I am not going to play into your
Conflict.
need for
Conflict is the source of consciousness. It's the beginning of consciousness.
Okay.
And I really like the operational analysis of this from an objective standpoint. It has to be if you're looking at betterment, because conflict is an opportunity. And the way conflict resolution specialists tend to try and sway groups or train other specialists in the field, if they adopt the Jungian philosophy of this, is they get people to try to frame conflict, the concept of it, into just a small set of words.
Right.
And almost across the board, they seem to be what most would perceive as negative words.
Right.
Are you talking about like I statements?
I'm talking about, like, if I ask both of you guys to describe conflict in 4 words, then
Struggle of self.
then all right, so that's a negative sound.
Well,
It's a negative sound.
to
It's
you.
not.
True.
It's not a negative. It's
To
not a
you.
negative thought. It's not negative to me. But that was
Struggle.
Struggle is perceivably negative, right?
Sure.
As opposed to opportunity.
Yeah, but the second you realize that with struggle comes growth, and growth doesn't
it's an opportunity.
exist in comfort.
Right.
Yeah.
It's semantics, but it's
is.
illuminating.
Save it for the semantics dome, maybe White.
Yeah, so it's illuminating because where people might perceive the things that are like borderline empirically are things like challenge to an aggressively dominant or domineering personality in a room is an opportunity for growth. Challenge to somebody who's subservient is probably pretty stressful. So
Yeah.
it's not a matter to sit around and debate. It's a matter of illuminating internal dispositions and preconceived notions of what things are. And then you get people that identify these things in those set of words, and then you combine them and tell them both to come up with the same number. Like, so if you and you had 4 words each, then you guys get together and come up with the best 4 until it gets narrowed down so much that a large group has a series of 4 words and see if it's empirically negative or positive or those borderline aspects. And you start to realize that if you reframe the perspective of these things, then you start to realize that conflict is the only feedback loop where you're going to start to be self-reflective and understand that things can either be an opportunity for growth and progress and change, which is not scary, or they're debilitating and paralyzing and cause a complete disability to be an interactive human, especially with yourself.
Well, I think you're touching upon a first order effect of higher emotional intelligence is you see more things as opportunities, vice anything else.
Right. It is. It's the beginning of that. It is the firstest order of effects.
So how important is it, going back to your operations in the United States military, how important is it, even in tense moments, combat, high importance operation, whatever it is going on, because not everything that SEALs do is all combat. It's some intelligence work, stuff like that. How important is it for you to be able to, in those tense situations, look inside yourself and take control of that initial reaction that you want to have and then offsetting it?
It's equally as important as it is to entertain the other perspective and put your own into a state of relativity that is appropriate for compromise to flourish.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's not going to be a resolution.
Right. So you're talking about the ability to not only look inside your own mind and see what's going on and
you got to
mitigate
accurately assess yourself and your own position in order to effectively make it relative to what you perceive the others being. And then you got to have a sound state of logic and inductive reasoning to accurately assess the relativity of the other's perspective to your own if you want to come up with a productive compromise. Otherwise, there's going to be no resolution. There's going to be danger.
So specifically speaking, when you're in a nondescript village somewhere trying to, convince a tribal elder or whatever that they need to help you with some information or whatever, it's equally as important to understand what you're dealing with, but also what they're dealing with as well, is what you're basically saying.
I mean, Doug's example about the AKs and stuff is perfect because, any human being that has a gun pointed at their head, I don't care how tough you think you are, how much experience or how gangster or whatever, everybody gets a little weak in the knees from that parasympathetic response. Everybody. But to have the presence and the wherewithal to understand that not only am I going to start to protect myself, but I'm going to smile and downregulate the severity of this interaction before I have to.
Well, it's like the smiling. So when I got guns pointed at my head, the smiling was not just for them, but it was also for me.
Right.
Because the body leads the mind leads the body. And it wasn't like I wasn't scared. I was like, oh, shit. I was like, this is going to be weird if I die this way. Which is like, I kind of work that way, too. It's like a little bit of silliness, kind of keep things light. But I immediately fall back to a third-person perspective of like, oh, yeah, Doug's in this car with a gun to his head. This is weird.
Yeah.
Like, how's this going to pan
You
out?
can die scared or you can die laughing.
Yeah. If you don't laugh at yourself, someone else will.
Yeah, fact.
Right. But that brings us back to the ability to jump into meta-awareness, right? It's that place of being able to look at your situation from an outside perspective, even your own mindful reactions, even your own emotional reactions to things, and to be able to suspend that stuff to then get your cognitive thinking back online. Because one of the things that the limbic system does right away is says, hey, I'm going to shut off the thinking brain, right? It's
conflict averse.
Yeah, right. It says, I want to run, right? It's the fight, flight, flee, freeze, and then a couple other things. But basically it says, I don't need to think my way out of this situation if a bear's walking out of the woods or if I'm looking down at a snake on the ground. We need to shut off my thinking brain, and we need to
Take action.
Yeah, take all the energy and put it into the legs so that I can run away, which is great 150 years ago, but it's not so great if we're dealing with business situations today, or if we're in a cubicle, if we're looking at a spreadsheet and we see something threatening or whatever. You know, your thinking brain gets shut off, and that's a horrible situation to be in today's world where we have other things that are non-physical that are going to be threatening us. We need to think our way out of them.
I mean, knowing how to start fire with primitive tools was make you a pretty big dick player back in the day.
Right.
But guess what? You can get at every gas station on every corner in every city everywhere now. Fucking big lighter.
Right.
Cool story. So, I mean, we have to reestablish relevant skill sets and have derivatives of our primitive selves
So
and our primitive brains.
a tool I use that I kind of mentioned earlier before we started recording is, I'm not a defensive person by nature, like how I just defended myself, but anytime, and I do this, I really try to be fair too. Like if I analyze, assess, or call out somebody for being defensive on something, or sincerely, genuinely ask about, hey, where's this coming from? Why are you defensive on this? I'd like to understand better. I try to make sure I do it to myself. So if I have a knee-jerk reaction, this happened a couple weeks ago. I said something to my girlfriend. I was like, no, it's not like that. And I was like, whoa. I was like, no, it is like that. Wait, why did I say that? And then I said out loud, I go, who just said that and who said the first one? And my girlfriend goes, what do you mean? I was like, well, think about this. I was like, I said it. Not Waking Brain Doug. Waking Brain Doug did not say, no, it's not.
Right.
I immediately, Waking Brain said, no, it is.
Right.
And then, what else just said, hey, who said the first part? Who said the second part? And then we just kind of sat there for a second.
Yeah.
Thought about that one.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that having a better understanding of how your self works or how your mind works is understanding there are multiple levels of consciousness within you that are going to have arguments about things at times. Like one of the great examples that I used for myself and on a podcast that I did recently was, you know, I can crack myself up sometimes, and I know whether something's...
I'm the funniest person to me.
Yeah, totally. But here's the thing.
It's a gift.
Who in there is making the jokes and who in there is laughing?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and you know,
Yes.
because if I had one consciousness within my mind that knew everything and was all in alignment, all on the same page, I'd never be able to make myself laugh because I'd know the joke and I'd know what was going on inside my mind to be able to create that humor. And I'd completely understand it, and it wouldn't be funny to me anymore. But the reality is that somebody's in there making jokes, who's the funny one, who then interjects the funny stuff, and then I laugh at it because, you know, a funny thought arises.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's unpack that a little bit. What the fuck is in my mind that is creating that funny thought that I then laugh at? I'm making myself laugh. So there's more than one consciousness in there. And I think increasing your emotional intelligence is understanding that there are going to be folks in there who are freaked out about certain things in certain situations. There are going to be folks who are sad about certain things in certain situations. And they all kind of create a kind of a board, you know, a board of directors in there that try to interject. And whoever's loudest or has the most clout in a certain moment
it's like
wins.
at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, while the group holds the Infinity Stone. They all control the power, but they're all individuals.
That's true.
Boom. Walk away.
Drop the mic on the mic stand.
Of course, we can't because it's attached to the wall, but you guys get the idea.
The thing with emotional intelligence, though, is I think it's important to kind of, before you begin trying to work on it, you got to frame yourself correctly. Is one, I think you have to have a sincere, non-judgmental curiosity about it.
Yeah.
And that saves me so many times from getting angry. When I have a reaction, I'm like, wait, why did I react like that? I was like, why did I react like that? That was silly. It immediately shuts off
Right.
that emotion, that anger, frustration, whatever it was. Again, that's a third person perspective. But I think if you focus on how you're framing things, you have a conversation yourself about what your core values are. Are your core values truth, sincerity, and improvement? Then you should be able to accept, like, oh, like if my family's like, hey, Doug, you were being a dick. I'm like, okay, yeah, sorry. I will work on that. And there's so this is my other point too, is people trained or just innately belittle their own feelings far too much. You can never control your feelings, but you can control what you do with them.
Right.
So when you feel something, don't fight it. And like I've learned this the hard road of fighting feelings and getting to like a breaking point of like, oh shit, I'm like fighting all this shit I'm not processing. It's so important not to belittle your own feelings, because that actually is what PTSD is in the brain. I'm sure we could talk hours about this too, but the conflict of your subconscious wanting to process something and your waking brain be like, nah, I'm cool with that, dude. Nah, you're good, brain. Don't think about that shit.
Right.
You know?
And that's one of the things that you can do. I mean, you can't control your initial reactions to things. Like you said, you can't control your emotions. I'd like to put a caveat on that you can downregulate your emotional reactions after the fact, and rather quickly, I might add, in that, one, if you dump yourself into your meta-awareness and you give yourself that little distance between you and the emotional reaction that's occurring, then that puts a little distance between you and what your brain is trying to make you do at the moment. But then the other side of that is that, there's some published science that Matt Lieberman, 2007, UCLA, when you put a cognitive understanding to how your emotion has come to be, all of a sudden that presses a magic button in your brain that shuts it off. That that tells the limbic system, hey, we're good. Like just what you just said a few seconds ago. Hey, we're good. I understand why this has come to be. This is not really a big deal. And then your limbic system stops sending that information up to your forebrain to try to control your executive actions anymore, like to react to the fear, to react to the sadness, react to the anger, whatever it is. You can turn that stuff off actively. So it's not like you can actually control the emotional reaction that comes up, but you can control immediately and almost to an unconscious effect after time, thanks to plasticity of it becoming more automatic. Like my brain right now, negative emotions are an option for me. Like if I think it's going to be useful, I will allow it to come to fruition. Like if you come and hit my kid and I need an adrenaline boost, I will allow that anger to come to full fruition as I'm putting you on the ground, to give me that extra oomph to communicate nonverbally to your body that you are not going to win this fight even if you try to resist me at this point.
Yeah.
Right. So I can consciously make the decision of whether or not I'm going to use that anger, or whether or not I'm going to use a frustration in a business perspective to use that as a little bit more of an oomph to go attack the problem or whatever it is. But at the same time, over time, plasticity allows me to say, you know what, I'm not going to be sad about that moment or that instance, or I'm not going to be...
You're not going to ruminate.
Yeah, I'm not going to ruminate about it. I'm not going to be fearful about it. I'm not going to allow it to control my executive actions. So while you can't control initially the reaction that you have in the flash in the moment, you can immediately take control of it and regain control of your thinking mind, turn back on your prefrontal cortex, think your way out of a problem. Like your story that you told previously. I mean, we put it up on a previous podcast, but it's an amazing story where you come around the corner and you have multiple AK-47s leveled at your head, and you immediately went to, okay, I'm not gonna freak out. And you went to the smile, you went to the, you grabbed your weapon.
Bonjour, music. Comment ça va?
Right, where you asked him, you gave him a big smile, you asked him how the day was going.
As soon as I smiled, too, I'll never forget this. It is seared in my brain. As soon as I smiled, when I said bonjour, monsieur, he had his gun up, and I could see the tension in his face. And as soon as I smiled and looked at him, he lowered it, and mild confusion.
Right, you gave him something to process that was non-standard for his expectation.
Yeah, and that's a really extreme example of not feeding into somebody's feedback loop.
Right, because you could have certainly taken action.
Oh, if I drew my gun, who knows?
Yeah,
they had the drop on us.
Yeah,
I mean, they were friendlies who didn't know who we were, but which is why we didn't draw, but they didn't know who we were. So the other thing too, I want to kind of highlight a conundrum people put themselves into. It's person A is like, hey, I'm going to improve my emotional intelligence. So okay, well I'm gonna be able to process things better and not get frustrated with friends or family, right? But then they continue to allow friend B into their life, who is, just not a great friend, right? So, but then they struggle to process like, oh no, I'm gonna be more more empathetic. But the issue is, in increase your emotional intelligence, you can't keep stuff around. You wouldn't keep a thorn in your thigh and be like, I'm gonna learn to deal with pain. No, pull the fucking thorn out and keep going on. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's a conundrum I think people overlook.
Yeah.
Is I'm gonna increase emotional intelligence, but I'm gonna live in the same environment. No, like you probably can't do that.
You don't see millionaires living in trailer parks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much has increasing your emotional intelligence helped your your relationships? You're getting married soon, so you have a you have a whole new
waka waka.
You have a whole new group of folks that you're adding to your self map, where you got your bride's family that you're going to be adding into your family, and you're becoming a portion of their. Like how much has understanding your mind and the minds of others helped you with forging new relationships?
Well, I'm amenable to the idea of getting married again, so that should be plenty illuminating. But so that's a whole can of worms we'll get into another time, I guess. But it's nice. It's nice to have a new group of folks to dump that excessive amount of compassion that just kind of overflows.
Yeah.
When you have like a community of folks where you care about, like, spend all your time with guys like them, and then you get out and it's just nobody that gets it, nobody to relate to, nobody that has similar interests, similar perspective, anything.
Yeah.
To have a new family that's kind of been around and therapeutic and engaging and genuine and authentic the whole time. It's nice. And, they've known our family since before I got out and stuff. So it's the easy transition.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, given all the information available, or at least all the information I perceive as available.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's not surprising. It's surprising if you just pay attention to the fact that sometimes I can be wittingly ignorant to the environment, and then I've been married before, and look how that worked.
Right. Doug, how's it helped with your relationships, romantic and otherwise?
I think the most significant thing is, and this is probably one of my shortcomings, is understanding what empathy really is.
Right.
I for too many years, I've just been like, oh no, there's no excuse for that person. They need to figure it out. Oh no excuse for that person. Figure it out. But that is fundamental attribution error when you're not considering the whole of the person.
Yeah.
It's like going to a junkyard with a dog who's been beat its whole life and it bites you and being like, that doesn't make sense.
Put it down.
It makes total sense.
perfect
What the
sense.
hell? So, circling back, I think being more empathetic does a couple of things. One, it separates you from reacting. Two, it puts you truly in the shoes of that person and be like, oh, okay, well, if I had that experience, I'd probably feel this way too. Or, I might have this perspective, or I might have this framework. So I think being empathetic has just the biggest, like, first, second, and third order impacts.
Right.
It's the best filter ever.
Yeah.
So if there was one piece of advice when you're interfacing with folks who want to increase their emotional intelligence, what would be the one piece of advice, the one step that you would suggest that they take?
I got this.
All right. Knock it out.
This is the fastest way to start identifying stuff, because increasing your emotional intelligence, I feel like it's walking through the woods looking for a trail of breadcrumbs. I think that's what it's like.
Okay.
Once you find it, as long as you stay on it, you can keep getting back on the path. But to find it, it's kind of hard at first.
Yeah.
So I think the way you find the trail of breadcrumbs is you start asking yourself throughout the day, tell yourself this first. Hey, anytime I get defensive, remotely, even the subtlest defensiveness about anything, don't let yourself get stuff by. Anytime you are defensive about something, sincerely and non-judgmentally ask yourself why and where that came from. You will find layers operating so deep that you didn't know were operating every fucking day.
Right.
Ask yourself, anytime you get defensive. No, it's not like that. Hey, Susan, did you finish this report? I did. Okay, why'd you get that defensive? If you know you did, you submitted it, why'd you actually get defensive? I mean, it's so practical.
Yeah.
My politician, your politician sucks. No, he doesn't. Okay, well, why did you actually get defensive? What ideas are you actually, did you attach to your identity that you just felt offended?
Right.
Like, there wasn't a physical attack on self. So you need to explore that. You need to be okay with exploring, and you need to do it non-judgmentally. You need to remember that it's okay. Do not belittle your feelings. No matter how you feel, don't judge it. Just explore it. You can't control how you feel, but you control what you do with it.
I agree with that.
Fact.
You're just going to say ditto?
No. I actually, if somebody approached me about advice on emotional intelligence, I would take an entirely different approach. And this is what Doug and I shared mine, just so so awesomely productive for both of us because our methodologies way different, but our thoughts are linear.
Right.
So if somebody would approach me about emotional intelligence, I would tell them that it's pivotal before anything happens in progress with emotional intelligence that you understand in a reflective state. You gotta know what your end state is.
Right.
You gotta know what's on the table for being compromised, and then you gotta weigh out cost benefit, whether or not the compromise is worth the end state. And if you can't do that on the fly and you don't get really good at it and really quick with it, you're gonna find yourself deliberating shit that's past you already. You know?
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that one of the keys to increasing your ability to control your mind and understand what your mind is doing is to take a look at your mind, drop into your emotional space of self-analysis and self-introspection and meta-awareness to
Be
say,
forewarned. If you're gonna do it sincerely, you're gonna find shit you don't like.
It sucks.
yeah,
Every time.
There's two kinds of people: those who sincerely explore shit and find shit they don't like, and people who just don't explore shit.
yeah.
You're gonna find something you don't like.
But it's only in the path of exploring your own shit that you're going to be able to clean that shit out of your closet.
And those who are most successful are the ones who are able to adapt quickly, explore non-judgmentally, and improve from there.
I agree. Nice. All right. Well, we'll wrap this show up here. We'll have some more stuff online on our website that you can check out regarding resources to improve your emotional intelligence. There are a number of little videos that are out that are probably good for you to see. There are a number of specialists who you can pick up their books, including one that I wrote, Mind Hacking Happiness. Let's plug the book again. And
Double plug.
don't forget to subscribe to this show because we're going to dig deeper into this topic in future episodes to give you some more practical advice on how to deal with specific situations that could occur in your life, etc. And we'll tell some more good stories. But don't forget to hit that subscribe button, mash that bell icon, check us out on social media. Hope this message finds you well. Talk to you soon. Peace. Share this shit.